Good day and welcome to this webinar, How to Build a Winning TV Platform, hosted by Digital TV Europe and sponsored by Zattoo. I'm Stuart Thompson, I'm the editor of Digital TV Europe. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how you can participate in today's session. First, if you have any technical difficulties, please press the help button on your player console to receive assistance in solving common issues. We welcome questions, and to submit those to today's speaker, simply type them into the window on the right-hand side of your screen and then hit the submit button. We'll answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that follows the main discussion, but please feel free to send in questions at any time and we'll add them to the queue. If at any time you're having audio difficulties or experiencing difficulty seeing the slides advance, simply hit the F5 key to refresh your webcast console. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and it will be available on the Digital TV Europe website, and you'll be notified by email when it's in our archive. So I'm joined today by Nicholas Westerman, who's Director of Product at Zattoo. Nicholas is a leader and product consultant in the video and TV business. He has a background in TV production, but turned to product development to bridge the gap between content and technology to create TV platforms for international brands and operators in different situations. As Director of Product, he oversees product development strategy and innovation, collaboration with Zattoo's customers. And we're going to begin today with a brief presentation from Nicholas, giving an overview of how to build a winning IPTV platform. So Nicholas, please take it away with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Stuart. Also from my person, welcome everyone. Good to have you today, and thanks you for your attention to listen to us on this webinar today. We're all aware that also the IBC is coming up, so if you are around, happy to discuss also everything we presented today and what we might discuss afterwards in person there at the IBC. So what we want to talk about today is how to build an award-winning TV platform. Why are we talking about that as Zattoo? We are around quite a while already, since 2005, starting with peer-to-peer transition of video content and very beginning of the streaming infrastructure. Today, we are a company operating our own direct-to-consumer business as Zattoo, but we also run a TV-as-a-service platform. We want to be the first choice independent TV streaming platform besides all the big guys out there, being also responsible for serving a lot of users and customers across the globe. Today, we have millions of users on the platform, including our D2C brand, serving 30 plus business customers from mid-size city carriers up to real big internet operators, network operators. And this is what we want to talk about today, share a bit of the insights, what we saw and what we see there, and which pillars and building blocks we use to combine them to a video platform which can play with the very big ones. This is actually the topic of today. So to set the scene already a bit, to set the landscape, where are we today? So TV is quite changing. I think all of us are aware. If you joined the webinar, you're also heavily interested in that development and how we will see that shifting. We perceive ourselves in a streaming transition. So television is moving to the internet. These are numbers from our own direct-to-consumer business. You see that a lot of people are already turning to internet distribution. So classical TV, but also VOD is on the rise, has surpassed satellite distribution, has surpassed cable. We can see all the numbers in the world about cord cutting, people who are switching from cable TV distribution, from classical satellite broadcast towards streaming and using television in this regard in a more interactive way. What we see here is also the VOD subscriber services, which are on the rise. That's also not a news for you, I guess, to have, at least in Europe, it is like around 3 streaming services in every household in parallel, sometimes used, sometimes also not used, because the cancellation is quite, for some users, a difficult thing. So in this area, we are seeing kind of like the market of linear usage declining, slightly declining over the last decades. This is powered also by VOD subscriptions, that people are moving away from the linear TV. Non-linear usage is on the rise. And this is a challenge we also see every day in our operations and in our product development. How do we position ourselves in the regard of TV distribution and TV complexity? When it comes to complexity, we just have outlined currently a bit of a development over the last years, how that complexity alone was growing. We were starting with the classical cable distribution, classical distribution over satellite, towards a modern IPTV offering, which is not perceived on one device on the television anymore, but is spreading across multiple functionalities. We have pause now. We can start over shows. We are used to record things wherever we are on every device. We are used to serial recordings. We are used to interactive other services to be free in our choice when we want to consume television. And of course, also the different variants of television distribution is not classical linear TV anymore, but contains a lot of different more content types we are talking about. So pay TV, free-to-air channels, catch-up TV, video on demand. And in the recent times, we are a lot discussing about FAST, so free advertised distributions of classical video files, which are now appearing as linear channel again within an advertising. And of course, we have the device landscape, which gets more and more complex by people not using a television anymore alone, but on all devices like operator set-top boxes, smartphones, smart TVs, and streaming devices. So in this area, the building blocks we want to tackle today and we want to talk about are basically three, where we believe that excelling in this area is key to build a platform which is really sustainable and successful on the market. First of all, we want to talk about content variety. Already stressed that a bit in this regard. Linear TV is still the classical element which is heavily used, but is declining constantly. So also products in this regard, platforms in this regard need to identify how they want to position themselves in this display. We do have media library consumption on the devices now. We do have VOD content, we have third-party VOD content, Netflix, Disney, Amazon, and the likes are everywhere. So how is a TV platform dealing with these elements? How are we able to combine all these elements, and how do we curate those elements towards a specific audience we want to reach? This is something which is something we perceive as one of the biggest challenges also in the upcoming years, where we are also trying to develop our platform in this regard to be fully flexible and configurable in that regard, that we can cater also the developments in this case. The second part is the multi-device compatibility. We'll touch on that in a second a bit deeper, but where are the users watching? Where are devices out there which are combined with each other? What is the main device? Do we need to have something like a set-top box present at home, carrying a brand, being around there? This is a bigger question also for a positioning of a platform, and that also comes together with the seamless user experience. So when it comes to award-winning cases, then often the ease of use is key. The way how users can access the platform, can find already the apps, can log in into the field and engage with the content and use the content. And then the question is, in this device and user interface management, how do we combine all these various contents in it? This is a tricky part, and I think the most important part is that we have an answer on that which is sustainable, so which measures really also the usage, and which gives us the chance to continuously improve content lineup, content display, content accessibility. We also expect in the future a lot of development there through AI, through more intelligence in the discovery, in the personalization of discovery. This is where we are also investing in and seeing how that works for the future. Important is really, again, I really want to stress that we need to measure what we are building there and see if users are really using that. One example I brought with is, for instance, if you have content discovery pages, users engage with the content, then this can have two dimensions and two meanings. One meaning is users are not finding what they search for. So actually they are short before churning away from your platform, or they are heavily interested in the platform, it could be a sign of retention, that they're really engaged and also coming back. So measuring that and interpreting these numbers and tying them back to the user interface development is a really important part of driving this success, and also continuously work on that. The biggest part probably, and the part which just should work at the end, is then the high quality streaming and performance part. And I think this is something where the most award-winning platforms are measured against. What is the video quality? What is the streaming quality? We are talking here about robustness. We are talking about caching. How do we distribute the content as close as possible to the last mile that users can really perceive content without having interruptions? And here we see, along through the technology of streaming, also kind of like a critical conflict between accessibility and, for instance, values like latency. Latency is something which is, by the technology of internet distribution, something which is per se more or higher than if you compare that to a cable or to a satellite. This is the reason why in a soccer match, people with a satellite are most of the time still the first ones celebrating a goal. And then you can see in your neighborhood already who is on which technology and can receive the goal a couple seconds later. The point is that the latency is dependent from the adaptive bitrate distribution we use in streaming. So addressing all the different devices is a cost we have to carry, kind of like in preparing also the signal. And the more interactive elements we use, like advertising ingestion, is also something which makes the signal structure more complex, and the preparation of the signal for distribution is more difficult and more time consuming than in other technologies. So we have, for a platform, really carefully to depict how important is latency, how important is the functionality we carry on those signals, in addition to adaptive bitrate accessibility. And this is a trade-off also we have to discuss every time when we set up a project. What is the target functionality we use, and how can we get into this area that we, for instance, can be also configurable per channel, that we have certain channels which have a different latency than others. But the quality and the robustness, we will see that also a bit later, still is actually important and the key, because television is something your audience is used to, that it just works. And I can tell from myself when I watch over Wi-Fi at home that streaming also should just work, but usually Wi-Fi connections are, for instance, a matter of disruption and also of interference. So it's really important that the platform itself supports this robustness also over technologies where we don't have the end-to-end connection to the device in all of our own hands, but user households have their own challenge in setting things up. So moving again a bit to the devices again, I have some numbers here, how we see it right now currently in our distributions across our customers. So we see that still set-top boxes still remain a thing and are a thing, especially for operators to carry the brand, to carry the emotional competence of TV connecting to products like a fixed line access. But we see also that a lot of people are already using on other TV devices beside the set-top box. So this double remote construct is often a problem for users. They want to have it lean, they want to choose the device themselves. So the variety of devices is constantly increasing, even if we are still shipping a lot of set-top boxes in different countries. And this is something which we need to have in mind also when it comes afterwards to time to market and things like that. The complexity in device support, also for marketing and communication in the long run, is really important and something we need to keep in mind once we decide for a certain set of applications for a platform. For strategic parts, we do have a couple of areas what we want to think about once we or before we end up actually driving into a platform setup. The first one is really important as the audience we want to address. So the target audience tells us a lot about device usage in advance. Target audience tells us a lot about how we want to address also the combination of content lineup towards these different audiences. We have currently a very, very fragmented usage. We do check that regularly at Zattoo. We are doing interviews. We are doing user research a lot in this regard, also across our customers themselves. So we do have still people, classical TV users with a remote at home, zapping through the channels. At the same point in time, we do have people who are running 3 or more TV VOD subscriptions in parallel and just consuming non-live. I do that myself. Once we have a new colleagues starting at Zattoo, just interviewing them and asking, how do you watch TV? And alone in the last, I think 3 months, I asked that question. We every time had, I think just 1 out of a group of 10 who was actually still watching a linear television program, and usually then in an event situation. Like we had the Eurovision Song Contest example, we have the Euro Cup example where soccer games are distributed. So a lot of fragmentation in that. And this is something a TV platform needs to cater for. So we need to understand who is watching where and who is watching how, on which device, in which situation. And then according to that, shape the content lineup and the content accessibility, and also reflect that in the discovery. Connected is this then to the monetization strategies? How do we want to earn money with that actually, and what are our different possibilities to do that? Diving a bit into this in a second. That is then the question, is your platform something which has an own revenue contribution? Is the platform something which is a cross-selling instrument for a fixed line service, like in a triple play bundling, for instance? Or what revenue contribution should the platform, or even every function and every feature of the platform itself, build together in your case? And what we also need to think about and to decide on is how we build an effective marketing and promotion. We see that quite often, that customers have a very high initial understanding of marketing spendings and efforts. So to promote the platform once it's built, and promote the platform once it's actually launched. And then we see often the marketing departments moving to other tasks and to other challenges, while a TV platform is operating a TV platform is a running and operating exercise. So users are complaining, users are rating, users are writing comments. You have app ratings, you have app store marketing and things like that, which needs continuous care, and also decide in the operations and during the operations in the direction of how the platform is perceived by new users and people you want to win to use on your platform. So all these 3 elements are pretty much tied together, and the platform itself needs to support that, offering functionalities and tools to help actually operating that over time. For the monetization strategies, I picked out again these 4 elements which are currently kind of like common, and we support fully as Zattoo on the platform. The first thing is the classical positioning as operator 4K pay TV, so the bundle together with classical TV functions in the fixed line contract, and the telephony contract, so it's triple play, and then with mobile together, quadruple play offering. Then we have the question of how we position subscription video on demand within the platform, giving access to special interest content maybe, but also to content per target audience. That's something where people already decide to freely bundle things into that, like kind of like a kids offering, something like that comes to mind, or to add this as a subscription product together with a language package, for instance, or foreign country package. Then we have the bigger question of TVOD. TVOD is something which is heavily discussed already, also in the field, because TVOD itself is total unclear what revenue contribution a TVOD offering brings to a certain market. It really comes to or depends on the content. What it gives, and this is something I would like to express here, is it gives, first of all, access to premium content. And this might be a reason already to go for TVOD, to have content available to market the product itself, because you are with offering TVOD still in this window, which is pretty close to the cinema distribution in the first public release. So the TVOD license window is quite something which might be an argument for a TVOD section on the platform, to have this content available, even if the revenue contribution might not be the biggest impact in this whole element. And then we have two areas which are pretty commonly discussed in the last couple months and recent times. The first thing is super aggregation. So how do we, as a platform, position the product in the content using space of a customer's home at all? How do we deal with Netflix? How do we deal with Disney Plus and the likes? Which purpose do we have solving the television problem of the user, of the customer at home? And how do we want to play that? This is super aggregation is a field which is technologically interesting, because you need to partner with really everyone. You need to bring everyone to your devices, to your content lineup. But it's also very special because currently we have still the case that we need a lot of partner agreements, a lot of partner contracts, and it's pretty difficult to find a common ground to have these arrangements with companies like Netflix and Disney, and then meet the same agreement which offers kind of like a common functionality to the user at the end. This is the tricky part. We hope that we are able here to solve a lot of challenges. And what we have in recent times is the question of FAST. FAST is actually dipping into one area, and this is the ad-supported content. So how do we use advertisements? How do we use the IP distribution for finding new ad inventory, which in the classical TV distribution is not around anymore? What comes to mind is an ad block, for instance, within a recording. How do we utilize that again in the classical TV distributions? When you imagine the times of a hard disk at home, this was simply not monetized. The ad block on the recording is already paid through to the linear distribution. Now, with the technologies of network PBR and direct and dynamic ad substitution, we can address these ad blocks. And we're starting now also using VOD, creating channels, linear channels again out of VODs with additional ad blocks to create new inventory, which might play also a significant role in your monetization strategy for the platform. So when we take the time again to look on one showcase we brought today, then as an example, what we did is the 1&1 platform, which is operated and run by Zattoo. So we are operating this platform already since quite some time, and also recently won twice, this time again the M-Test Award, but also in recent years the Connect Test Award for the platform distribution here. Important is, I think, to say what the award is measuring actually. This is first-hand side, the video quality, the zapping time and signal distribution, but also startup times and discovery speed and time, which is across the whole landscape of TV distribution, usually passing a lot of individual blocks of technology, which we hope to showcase also here that a end-to-end platform like Zattoo has the benefits in actually solving all these transition areas in technology blocks to provide a sustainable platform here. For the last slide, and then we can go into a discussion a bit, are a couple key questions that operators and customers might ask themselves before really dipping into this question of what do we want to achieve, or how do we want to address that? So the first question is really, what do we want to achieve, and actually then accompanied by the discussion around how many investment also focus-wise do we want to give in this regard. So first of all, we really want to recommend to be clear about the general objectives. So where is a platform product really living in your space of product development? What do you want to achieve with that? And how do you measure this? This is also a question we have in the very first hand when we discuss about building up a platform, onboarding customers, is what is the measurement of success? What do we want to achieve? And then cater and spec out actually the actual configuration and setup of a platform like that. The second thing is really be clear and have an idea about the team. What do you want to build up yourself? What do you need? What do you see as your core competency in the company? We have customers who operate a TV product with 1 to 5 employees in the whole company. We have other customers who run departments. Actually, depending on that, our collaboration and the setup of a platform is actually designed and together decided on. And this, of course, has also consequences for time to market. And the third one is provide a clear direction for the business case. We touched that briefly in the various monetization strategies. Should the product itself generate a positive contribution margin, or is that something which is actually cross-financing or supporting a different product like a fixed line product, which carries the main load of income and revenue here, where the value-added service delivers different aspects like attractivity, emotional content, and things like that to support the main reason. And I think this is it from my side from the short presentation. I hope that already gives a bit insights in what we have to imagine and have to consider. I think we share that also after the webinar. Now, Stuart, happy to join a discussion and talk about one or two of these aspects we showcased here.
Thanks, Nicholas. That's great. I mean, I think that was a really interesting, great overview of all the different moving parts that operators and their technology partners need to think about when they're building a platform. And it just really highlights the complexity of delivering something that's compelling for consumers, for subscribers. And maybe we can start the discussion off by just segueing from that last slide, which is a kind of overview of things operators really need to think about in terms of the big picture of TV. Really, when you're looking at a TV operator or a network operator, perhaps with broadband and as a high margin product, how important is TV really as a driver of customer acquisition and retention for those operators? Is it something that they really need?
So we believe, and this is also the reason, of course, why we run a business on that actually, is that TV is a substantial driver for customer acquisition and also for retention, because it solves two cases from my perspective. So first of all, it is an emotional medium what we are distributing. So if you're talking about bandwidth, if you're talking about accessibility, this is usually not really something which gets an attachment to emotions, which is a retention factor. Television is emotional as such. The medium was and is still transporting emotions, and therefore we see that as a main attractive product added value to every other added value strategy what an operator might have on accessibility. And on the other hand side, it is utilizing and using and consuming the main product which is sold, and this is bandwidth. So to have bandwidth sold is the best argument to have something which also uses this bandwidth for every household and every customer. And out of these two elements, from my perspective, it is a massive acquisition driver. On the other hand side, it can also be a risk if you don't do it right, because emotions are working in two directions. They can be positive and they can be negative. So if we have, and that's why the quality and the stability and the robustness is so important also for us, is that this can turn also into churn. So if your TV product is not working and is not working stably and not accepted at all, people might even churn not just the TV product, but the fixed line product. So this goes in the two directions.
That's a very good case, I think, for making TV part of the service package, but also thinking very carefully about how you do it. It is a two-way street, a two-way possibility of how people will react. The next question I have really relates to the discussion you had about linear versus on demand or non-linear viewing, which I think is very topical at the moment. I was looking at some data from our sister research organization Omdia's cross-platform viewing time report, which showed that it looked at consumption trends across the US and Australia, 7 markets in Europe, including Germany, Spain, Sweden, the Netherlands, France, and Italy, the UK. And it found that linear TV viewing time decreased in all of those markets last year, driven by shift to on-demand, social media viewing. In terms of overall minutes, Germany was down 19.3 minutes, the Netherlands was down 19 minutes. Those were pretty significant falls. And also in the US, which is obviously a huge market, that was down by 12.7 minutes or 7.3% over that year. So it's obviously an ongoing trend away from linear towards on-demand and non-linear viewing. To what extent do you think that shift from linear TV in the living room to subscribers to modern IPTV offer leads to increasing expectations on one hand from consumers, but also complexity in terms of how you offer those services? What do you think are the kind of impacts of this shift?
So first of all, we see that also in our recent user research, what we did ourselves. So if you talk to people how they consume at home, then we see a lot of things like Netflix. We see a lot of shared watching sessions with friends and things like that. But we also see the classical TV distribution in having actually the content which is not on streaming portals, or where TV is the classical distributor, like be it trash content or very special interest content, what is not for a larger audience. This usually you find that still in linear discoveries. And for us, the complexity is really that the wish for easy access to content is still there and still stays on the user side. So nobody wants to deal with 6 or more subscriptions to get this bundle of content, even if everyone does. So we also see really people who are operating or subscribing to 4 or 5 services, but they just use 2 of them because they are too lazy to deal with the cancellations and the re-subscription and things like that. So for us, this is a challenge we take up and we want to solve, actually, which drives the complexity, because you need to deal with all the access to the content. You need to deal with the content partnerships. You need to deal with the regulations regarding that. And every aggregating approach in this regard is actually sourcing to others' conditions, namely to the conditions of the content suppliers. And they are, as I said in the beginning, also in the presentation, they are not the same. So every supplier has their own business model, their own rules, their own regulatories. One supplier wants to have a button on a remote. The next supplier wants to be visible in the channel list. The next supplier wants to have a certain consent or confirmation before you actually engage with the supplier. This is a complexity which drives a lot of our developments currently, and is indeed very complex to figure out where you want to position your product to be successful on the market.
Absolutely, yeah, I can fully appreciate that. And when you look at the complexity and the expectations that consumers have, which is being driven by these changes in consumption patterns and the expectations they have from these new advanced services. I mean, I can cite some more stuff. Data from Omdia that show that online video revenues, online video across SVOD transactional premium grew 18% in last year and expected to maintain that. So that's the revenue side. It's obviously increasing massively. The expectations are not just from consumers, they're also from the operators themselves and the content partners about what this can deliver. And can you perhaps fill in on how you see those increased expectations evolving, and what that means for the network operators themselves, the TV operators themselves, perhaps using some of the case studies you have from your own platform.
Yeah, so I think I can share that. So from my perspective, the network operators get in the focus of all different parties which are operating in this regard. So from users' perspective, they want to have an easy access, ideally served out of one hand with a very reasonable also customer care and customer support, especially ease of cancellations, ease of resubscriptions and things like that, flexible models together with their inherited TV consumption patterns. And on the other hand side, the network operators actually own the user contact on a very deep technical level. So if you have followed also after the Russian invasion in Ukraine and all the developments on the world, the subscriber number war between the streaming services, then you see that network operators do own a lot of contact to users actually, which are again moving into sight of those big companies like Netflix and the likes. So we see that concretely in the way that in the past it was pretty hard for a medium-sized operator or a city carrier, something like that, to get Netflix as a partner, or to actually talk to Amazon and talk to Disney. This is changing. So even the mid-sized customers are now perceived as value to get access to users and be partner in this regard. And this is what we see also coming as a requirement then to platforms like ours, to be able to integrate all that, to provide access to them, to also explore how that should work and what would be the best user flow, the best usability around that. That's a huge challenge. And this is not just coming from the consumers themselves, but really from all sides. And you have, of course, also the regulatory demands following that. When it comes to AI, when it comes to recommendation, when it comes to advertised models, you automatically are in the realm of privacy settings, of consent management, of a complexity which comes also from that angle.
Right. And I know you talked a little bit during your presentation about how two of the network operators you are partnered with were able to deliver very competitive, attractive products, as shown by Tess. So I know that those TV offerings powered by you turned those tier 2 operators in Germany into winners in that prestigious test ahead of the local incumbents. Can you talk a little bit more about how they achieved that and what really enabled them to compete with that sort of tier 1 level of operator?
Yeah, so it's actually two ways, because we also see here in this regard two very different companies. One is really a large one with 1&1, and one is really a local, regional player with Net Cologne in the Cologne area. And both of them were able to make really the highest ranks in terms of video quality and video delivery, which is thankfully a very big part of our delivery and platform development, to be really there with our caches in the network to own the distribution of the quality and also the experience we have in delivering this video quality across the various devices. But also the set-top box development in this regard. This specific tests played a big role because startup time and performance are quite important, and also part of the measurement here. So for 1&1, we developed the set-top box together with them actually, which is something you can do if you have a certain size. So to really source your own devices, source your own hardware, do this the layout yourself, and then build a product which really is optimized for that. For Net Cologne is a bit different. There we are on a set-top box product what we designed and built with a partner within Zattoo, and then offering to medium-sized operators as a turnkey product actually, which distributes kind of like the effort of such innovations across more shoulders, not just on a single operator in this regard.
Right. So there are interestingly multiple ways that those operators can look at developing a TV platform or a TV service, and there are different things to think about, different ways of doing it, depending on the scale and the resources available to the individual operator. Very interesting. One of the factors, obviously, that people think about when, and you mentioned this again in the presentation, is the question of time to market. How big a factor is time to market when it comes to developing your own offering in the TV market, when you're looking at things such as customer onboarding, processing time, project development, product, all the rest of it? What do the operators need to think about in terms of time to market, whether it makes sense to get there quickly, whether there are other things you need to think about that may take more time?
I think we can tie it back to the strategic decisions I outlined also in the presentation, because these three areas are actually the important ones, beginning with the target audience. So how do I really want to set up my content lineup and to reflect the target audience? So contract management and licensing is a huge pile of a time-consuming element. And the better we are also in this together, we are also helping there in various markets, is something which can shorten the time quite significantly. And then you have, of course, the questions of how you set up a process management and integration across these various questions of monetization, models of product levels, how do you want to design the product, and which hardware comes into play, what are release cycles in this regard. So currently we are, I think, in the state that we have done all the variants already quite often and quite some time. So we are actually very fast in the time to market if we need to be. But this varies really a lot across customers, depending on where they are in answering also the questions I shared in the last slide, and how their actual design of their product offering, really how mature is that already. Sometimes you run into developments where the companies themselves need to kind of like have a slight restructuring or something like that to be able to cater for television. So customers who are migrating are often far in that, and there we have a very short time to market because they answered all these questions already. Maybe also they measured them over time, they know what they want to change, and they have a very concrete question in regard how they want to set up the product with us again. But then the questions are rather, how do we ease the process of migration? Which is also something where you can do a lot to also help users switching TV products without being too much disrupted in their daily TV routine and things like that. So the factor itself, to answer a question, again, is something we can vary with customers together depending on their need. We have standards in place for a lot of things, but standards also mean less individuality, more compatibility with others in this regard. So the more individual, the more special your positioning should be in your area, then this has definitely an impact on time to market usually.
Right. So yeah, time to market is obviously one factor that operators need to think about in terms of their approach to the TV market. Another variable, so to speak, is, as you mentioned, as you talked about when you were talking about Necklone and 1+1, is size of the operator itself and the resources available. How does Zattoo adapt itself when it comes to the needs of the larger internet service providers looking to enter the TV market?
So we try, and this is actually then one of my responsibilities directly within Zattoo, is to co-develop with our customers, to be really together with them at the forefront of the industry and of the market. So what we really want to understand is how they position themselves, how they see trends. This is not something where everyone is already far, but if you have large internet companies, usually they do have a division, they do have a strategy department, which ideally works within TV and is around the area already also quite some time. So in this case, we team up. And that is a huge value also for us to learn really daily from other experience, from others' markets, because also these internet companies are the specialists in their field and in their market. So everywhere you have regional specialties. Germany is very, very special when it comes to TV rights and right handling and also technical functionalities. So to discuss something like that with someone who's not from Germany is quite difficult. So we really benefit a lot from this collaborating aspect. And we use that also to define our roadmap and our future developments together with the customers. So this is not something we set up and then distribute like this is what you will get, but we really align that before we enter special implementations. And this has proven really its value already over the last years.
Great, okay. So we'll shortly be looking at the questions coming in from the audience, and please do keep those coming in. But before we do that, perhaps we can round off with just some comments from you on what you think the unique value of your own platform is as a tool for operators to deliver TV services. What's the unique value of the platform?
So when it comes to building up a platform, then there are various options how you could tackle that as a customer or as an operator. In this regard, you could pick a variety of distributors of partners who team up to deliver various aspects of the platform, which comes with two main costs from my perspective. One is the risk of technical failure, because those partners need to build interfaces and need to collaborate. And it comes with a cost of delay, because all these partners need to set up something, to talk together, to do an integration project and things like that. And you build something up actually the first time, even if all these partners are collaborating with each other already for years. What we see in the TV market is a constant development. Everyone develops and improves and evolves. So I would assume that interfaces also between companies which were in place a year ago are not the same today. So even if they have proven that already quite some time, and we also see that in the market, that those best of breed implementations usually come to a point where struggling starts on one of the basics, like we see those test results on video quality, on distribution, on CDN, things like that, even if the technologies themselves are quite mature. So our benefit is, and this is what we believe, that's why we are following a TV-as-a-service approach, that we need to have the major pillars of the system tested and proven and operative over a long period of time. If you make an example, a very specific one, you can hire companies and integrate companies who tell you what goes wrong in the player when you have a lagging zapping time, for instance. But that shows you what happens in the player. It shows you not the reason. Why is it happening? So just if you know where the signal is coming from the CDN distribution, from the encoding, from the head end, if you have the full chain, then you can understand not just what is happening and why it's happening, and then you can address the problem. So it's easy to find a problem, find a symptom, but it's not easy to really over time continuously improve on those things. That's why we believe that our platform is a very stable one and a very performant one in this regard. And we believe in this TV-as-a-service approach. What also means that we might not be competitive in each and every feature every company offers in this single slight regard. So what we try to do is to find the real use cases which are supported and to get rid of the overhead. So we won't compete with an analytics company. We won't compete with a company who offers ranges of different tech stacks regarding a certain area of TV distribution. But what we want to do is we want to own really and to perfectionalize the necessary pillars of the distribution and identify the use cases which are really used from operators operating that. I think this is one of our biggest unique value. And we do that while operating our own end consumer platform. I think this is also very special for us, that we really serve users. We know what happens out there. We get the feedback right away from the audience, not behind a first and second level support. If we do something wrong, if one of our concepts is not working, we directly see that. So this combination, I think, makes us very special in the market. And I would identify those two as probably our biggest unique values here.
Yeah, great. I think that reliability of a service is so crucial, isn't it? It's getting something that is built up over time to be completely reliable and doesn't break down. It's so common to experience problems with TV services, as I know as a consumer. But I think that reliability is key. And as you say, having that front end experience with a consumer service is so important. I think also just to make sure you know exactly what's happening in the market itself and not just at second hand. Absolutely great. So let's have a look at some of the questions that we've had coming in from the audience. We have one on question of getting people to sign up for services. So obviously we talked about the different variety of services you have there. So there's subscription services, which obviously you do need to register and sign up for. There's advertising-based services, AVOD, FAST you mentioned. For those types of services, does requiring people to sign up or register, even if it's free, reduce the sort of audience you're likely to get? Is there a kind of barrier to entry there to get people to sign up if you're offering something that's essentially a free service?
So if I understand the question correct, then we do have, of course, a device problem. I'm just missing the word right now. I want to use. So if you sign up for a service, then the question where you find that service and where you sign up is probably the one which we are referring to here. So this is a tricky part, especially if the usage happens on the big screen. So how do I sign up on a big screen is still a problem and will remain a problem because the navigation patterns are not meant for complex entry of passwords, addresses, texts, and things like that. Whoever has used the Apple TV remote for entering large texts without the dictate function, it's horrible and it's really a struggle. So what we try to achieve is that the UX needs to support that in the way helping to cross device barriers, helping to, with QR code measurement, for instance, direct people to the devices they can use for sign up. I think this is also the benefit of aggregation approaches when operators take over this challenge, that they already have this kind of contact and they are good in selling and sign up. This is their profession, like bringing users to onboard to a product. So I think this is also where the need comes from to have one hand managing all your subscriptions and your different variant services you're offering, next to the price question, of course. So to have a bundled product might also limit the amount of spendings a user might to have take into consideration.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that. Another question. You talked a little bit, I think, during your presentation about, and also during the discussion about the impact of the large global platforms that are really the hub for content that everyone is watching. We're talking about Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney, and so forth. How does Zattoo, a company like Zattoo, really retain a sort of key or leading position as a within TV streaming in the face of that kind of competition? I guess this might also apply to your consumer-facing service too, just in terms of what you how you position yourself there against all these big global streamers.
So for us, I think it's true what for the majority is true. The only constant is change. So we need to adapt every day in both directions. As our D2C offering needs to adapt regularly, our offering technically wise for operators needs to adapt. I think our benefit is our way of respecting regional specialties and also regulations. I think this is, we were founded in Switzerland and Germany, operating two markets which share kind of like a lot of the content, but are totally regulated in a different way. Switzerland is a country where people are used, due to master copy allowance and catch-up allowance, to use outside of linear restrictions, actually. So the linear usage is quite much more higher than in Germany. In Germany, you have to do an individual copy network PVR, for instance. So it's the same functionality perceived from the user's perspective, technologically 100% different, where we need to adapt to these things. And the streaming rise with Netflix and the likes is nothing else. It's something we need to adopt to. But it gives us also the help that often markets are perceived as too complex for the big guys coming to those markets. We see that, for instance, why Amazon is not really present in Switzerland, for instance. It's actually, from my perspective, the amount of languages which are spoken in Switzerland and the inability to deal with Swiss German, for instance, which is a very local specialty where you have to react technically in a very complex way. And our platform gives us, luckily, the chance to do exactly that and to cater for some of the regional specialties bigger companies might not see a value in really reflecting that. HBB TV is also a big topic for American companies, something they simply don't understand. Why is that there? What is the benefit and how should we treat it? But in Europe, we do have it as a must-carry function for certain distributions. Something which gives us then the benefit to be able to own the full tech stack, also from ingest to play out on the devices to be able to reflect that.
Absolutely. It's that key, that local knowledge, that local expertise, and the ability to adapt in those environments that perhaps these global giants just don't have, the bandwidth, the time to think about, because it doesn't make sense for them. But having that specifically local knowledge and expertise is absolutely essential to deliver services to people in all these different smaller markets, and Europe in particular is a very complex environment for regulations, for technology platforms and everything else. Great. Okay, I think we have just about run through our hour. So it leaves me to thank you to your audience for attending. I'd like to thank Nicholas Westermann for an outstanding presentation and a really interesting discussion on that covered, I think, quite a lot of ground in terms of what operators need to think about and how TV platforms are evolving. I'd like to thank Zattoo for sponsoring today's event. And it leaves me to say that on behalf of Digital TV Europe, please have a productive remainder of your day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.